Welcome into another edition of the Commitment Issues podcast. We moved our recording schedule up a day with so much big news. Rob Cassidy joining me from lovely Miami. Rob, how's it going today?
It's going, man. There's lots going on in sunny Florida, and it's currently storming right now, and I'm sure by the end of this you'll hear a police car or an ambulance soon by my house.
And Nick Kruger, I think he was under tornado watch yesterday in Texas. Did you make it through? Did you go into the tornado shelter or whatever?
Well, it just looked worse than it was. It actually blew right over. The bigger storm was my glorious return to the soccer field. Played an entire game in my men's rec league, and boy, I'm feeling 100%, guys.
Oh wow, boy! Congratulations. My short-lived soccer career over now that you don't live in Atlanta anymore, because I don't have any friends and I'm really bad at soccer. So let's roll. We wanted to do our typical plugs at the top of the show here. Reminder to subscribe on iTunes. Or any other, podcast listening platform that you might use. You can contact us at Rivals Podcast and send us an email, rivalspodcast@yahoo.com. We're more than happy to interact, answer questions on the air, things of that nature. And of course, we all have our personal Twitters. You can figure them out from there. It's not that big of a deal on that front. Let's get right into this week's top 5. The number one topic. Yesterday, we were all enjoying a nice Sunday afternoon when news came down of Les Miles, LSU coach, getting fired. Also on the way out, his offensive coordinator, Cam Cameron. This was something that we think had been coming for a while, but I don't know. It was a bit surprising, so I kind of want to weigh in. Rob, we can start with you. What did you think of the timing of this and kind of the rationale behind the move? Do you think it was the right move?
The timing of this, first of all, was terrible because it caused me to burn the ribs that I was cooking because I forgot about them while I was rushing to contact people and figure out what was happening. I think it had to happen. The timing is a little odd, but, as somebody very close to both of us said, timing is timing. And it's you'd think that they would have done this last year because they did kind of hamstring him by coming out and essentially trying to fire him last year, right? And then kind of, reneging on that and taking it back. So he wasn't stable at all. I mean, everybody knew this was a possibility this season. Now you got to I can see why they feel like they need to get rid of him now because they don't want, that uncertainty to loom over the program and affect recruiting. But now that you have an interim in and you've got Ed Orgeron taking over, who has kind of become, Mr. Interim head coach, it's going to be hard to recruit that way too. I don't know if the team's going to get any better this season, but how do you sell recruits, Nick Kruger, on a program that doesn't have a coach in place? Say, hey, come play for LSU and you can play for somebody next year. I mean, that's not a very strong pitch, is it?
No, that was my initial thought too when I heard the news. I was wondering, if you're going to fire Les and you're going to fire Cam Cameron, certainly Cameron would be the most understandable. If you were to fire one or two of them right now, it would make more sense to me to fire Cameron in the short term, leave Les in the driver's seat for the rest of the season, secure the commitments that they have a top 5 recruiting class right now per our rankings. Get those guys to get those letters of intent in, then fire Miles ahead of training camp with the new coach in place, with all those guys on the team, and get going into next season. I mean, I think as it stands right now, it is a curious situation. I suppose in the short term, Ed Orgeron is the right move to put in as an interim head coach because we all know his acumen when it comes to recruiting and maybe securing some of those relationships with guys that are a little unsteady with their commitment at this point going forward. But right, I mean, it's definitely a question as to who's going to be leading the team next season and how do you sort of position yourself as a program to make sure that guys going forward, not just coming in next year, but already on the team, how do you sell them on the fact that there's security in the program there? And certainly there's already a dandy short list of coaching candidates to fill in for less, that are top level coaching options, but it's until somebody's hired, who's it going to be,
Well, I think they definitely botched the timing of this. I mean, if you wanted to do it last year, just do it last year. Why did you have to? I mean, if you thought it was the right move then, that you should make the move. I remember, thinking of some other coaches who got off to a slow start, and it's like, well, he'll probably be fired in 2 or 3 years. Well, it's like, if he's going to be fired, just fire him now. Like, what's the thinking there? Because now the situation we're going to have is, it's going to be a holding pattern. And we saw Florida's recruiting really suffered under Will Muschamp the last year when he was kind of a lame duck. So I understand they didn't want Les Miles in that situation. But now you've given these other schools, I don't know how many months, two or 2.5, 3 months to kind of circle in and target your guys. So I think it's going to be key because of this transition, the way it's going. They're going to have to, the new coach that comes in is going to have to keep some of these key assistant coaches. Maybe it is Orgeron, a guy like Corey Raymond, the DB's coach that everybody loves so much, Austin Thomas, the director of player personnel. I think some of those guys are going to have to stay. So then you run into the problem of, okay, a new coach is coming in. Do you let him clean house and bring in all his guys and sacrifice an entire recruiting class? Or, do you just kind of keep some of these guys and hope that they gel together under the new staff?
Well, that really depends on who they get, right? Like, they'd be happy to have, if they somehow pulled out the way of getting Jimbo Fisher, they'd be happy to have some of those guys, right? But, if they hire Tom Herman, nobody wants, he's got some guys there, but they're not all LSU level players, right? They're not going to want that class.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's very true. If for example, when James Franklin went to Penn State, he picked some of Vanderbilt's best recruits and took them with him. But I don't know. I think this is going to be one of those things where you almost have a lost class. Kids in Louisiana are super loyal to LSU no matter what, so I wouldn't be surprised to see most of them stick around. But, as we were looking over the class yesterday, Nick, I think there's 7, 8 players from Texas. There's a few guys at IMG who are from Texas who are committed. What is their loyalty to LSU, especially, if Texas A&M makes a run to the college football playoff or something like that and has the recruiting momentum? Why would some of these guys stick around knowing that, that they're not from Louisiana? They just happen to commit to Les Miles and maybe his assistant coaches.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Last night when we were trying to round up opinions from kids that are committed, I talked to Edward Ingram, a lineman from DeSoto. He said that he has no plans on changing his commitment in the short term, has no idea as to whether or not he wants to take official all these kids are going to say the same thing at this point because it's all news to them, and they don't, nobody has a plan, a cause and effect plan if they're, essentially if their future employer gets the can ahead of them, being hired to play for that team. So I don't think a lot of these kids right from the jump are going to have an immediate feel for like, oh, well, LSU is out of the picture now. I've been committed for 2 months. I'm just going to go to plan B. I think Austin Deculus, when he committed, he was a sure sounding of an LSU commit as anybody could have been. Said that he had been a fan of the team since he was a kid and felt like it was a family scenario, from his first visit on campus. And same thing with Kerry Vincent, said that he couldn't imagine playing for anybody other than LSU. I think maybe a guy like Manny Netherly, who has already flipped from Texas A&M to LSU, is maybe another guy is a guy that's maybe on watch to flip again, because he had some flirtations with Alabama, and certainly Texas A&M has still been recruiting him. So that's maybe the most likely guy to flip in the short term that I can think of from Texas. But afterward, we're just going to have to start seeing where kids start taking some official visits here thereafter.
Yeah, so it's going to be a long story short. It's going to be a long fall for us as we now have to track a lot of this stuff. There's going to be a ton of movement. I guess we should then now talk. We can kind of transition into first actually let's take a look at the old hot board on our LSU Rivals site, which you could find at lsu.rivals.com. They got the old coaching board up. We'll go over some of the candidates here. The number one guy they have on the board here. Oh, actually, no, never mind. They're in alphabetical order, which makes sense. They have Larry Fedora, Jimbo Fisher, Tom Herman, Ed Orgeron, who's going to be the interim, Gary Patterson, Chris Peterson. That's not happening. Bobby Petrino, David Shaw. No. So there's half the Pac-12 seems to be on this list for some reason.
Well, but David Shaw's not happening. Chris Peterson's not happening. Bobby Petrino's not happening.
Fedora is a wild card. It's basically Jimbo Fisher. Everyone thinks Jimbo Fisher and Tom Herman.
Well,
But I could see Fedora
the
being
common theme here
interesting.
between all these coaches here is, high powered passing offenses, which is like all we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks is how, they LSU recruits so well offensively, gets great wide receivers, could do better at quarterback, but definitely doesn't make the most with the pieces that they have. And wouldn't you guys say that's Ed Orgeron aside, because he's already on staff there, but I mean, look at the rest of the list. It's all big time power passing offenses. Well, maybe
Well,
not
our boy at TCU, Gary Patterson, is a defensive guy, and that's a name I had never thought of. But boy, if you're him, wouldn't you want to get the heck out of the Big 12? I'd like to get out of there.
Yeah, but we've watched TCU play this. You can say he's a defensive coach all you want.
Yeah, North or South Dakota State has other.
No, but I mean that's what I'm saying. Is that's how he made his hallmark, right? I mean that's the reason that he got. That's the reason he got that job. That's the reason he is famous for having that job.
But
is because he's had those defenses.
Yeah, and he was willing to adapt, and that's what we've seen him change his offensive philosophy as they've been able to get better players in there. I just don't know. I mean, I know last year we thought Jimbo Fisher, that was the word, that he was already going to take the job. Why would he leave Florida State for LSU? No offense to LSU, but I just think he's in a great situation there. People love him at Florida State. He's already won a national championship there. They're going to be in the mix every year because of the conference. Personally, if I'm a coach, I don't know why I would leave a situation like that to go play or coach in the SEC West unless it's just a financial decision, and I don't see why Florida State couldn't match, the money there.
No, I don't either. Like I said that from the beginning when everybody was convinced that there's all those silly message board rumors. It's they had a deal with Jimbo in place last year and then Les won. I'm like, well, that is the furthest thing from true that I've ever heard. It doesn't make sense to me unless it is, like you said, a giant raise because money talks, man. But Florida State's got money. It's not like Florida State is Western Michigan.
All right, so boy, shots fired. Guess what? I had a great time in Kalamazoo.
Western Michigan's fine, but it doesn't mean their athletic department has money. They don't. I think everybody will tell you that.
Yeah. So if we had to make a pick today, who's the smart money on in this group? Is it Herman? I mean, he makes a lot of money too at Houston, and I think if they go undefeated this year, they might have a shot at the playoff as well. So do we think Herman is the smart choice? Who's the odds-on favorite here?
I think it's Herman.
Nick, what do you think?
I mean, we've talked about Herman. Every coaching job that comes open, Herman is and Woody. I mean, you've essentially over the past couple of weeks talked me into Herman staying at Houston no matter what. I would go if I'm Gary Patterson. I make the switch if they reach out to me because I think his team. I think he expected coming into this season for his team to be in better shape than it is, and I think that all their commits in this class right now are like it's not the same feeling of firm commitments going forward coming out of this class. If I'm him and LSU's offering me money and a job in the SEC, I'm jumping ship immediately.
And you don't even have to change clothes, really, right? I mean, you can keep all the purple you have.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a different hue. Although LSU did wear those mustard yellow whatever jerseys those were last week and called them gold. So you never know what the color palette's like over there. I think we can kind of touch on this briefly. Which schools we think are going to benefit from this uncertainty. I think you can basically take a look at a map, right, and assume the schools in Mississippi, Alabama always does well in Louisiana, even going head to head with LSU. Maybe Arkansas. They're trying to recruit that state, and they have nabbed a few guys out of there. And of course, the schools in Texas. I personally think the door's open now, officially. We talked about how Texas is back, Texas is not back. I think they have a chance to nab a few of these guys from the state of Texas if they play their cards right. Nick, do you think they're in the catbird seat here, or do you think it's a matter of spreading the wealth?
Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity for that. I mean, Kerry Vincent was a guy that already had, I think, plans to take a trip to take a visit to Texas. We've always talked about how they like to close late. They didn't change the game plan this year. I think we're just gonna, we're gonna have to wait and see, read the tea leaves as things continue to play out. But Texas definitely has a feeling of, we'll get who we want. We're just going to do it at our own pace, and it doesn't matter if they're committed to somebody else, no matter what.
Yeah, boy, I don't know. It's a crazy situation. I think the IMG situation is a wild card. Several players from Louisiana and Texas that are looking hard or committed to LSU out at IMG that may open the door for a school like Florida or some of those schools to maybe make their pitch as well. All right, enough LSU talk. Let's go back to making fun of some other people. USC. What is going on? I mean, there's all kinds of crazy news coming out of there. Different things are happening. EJ Price leaves the school. He was a Rivals 250 offensive lineman. I know, not one of my favorite recruits of all time to cover, I would say, if we were, basing it on interactions. No clue on where he's going to go. Of course, all the schools in the SEC think he's going to come back there. I personally think he's probably going to have to go to JUCO just because of the academic situation of leaving mid-semester and things like that. Is this what obviously we're all looking at this from a distance, but I mean, Rob, what do you think? I mean, are we headed for a disaster at USC because of the way things are breaking this season, both on the field and all these locker room problems we're hearing about off the field?
I mean, aren't we kind of like in the thick of a disaster at USC? I don't know if headed there is the right word. I mean, this has been kind of like a 4-year long odyssey of disaster. Yeah, I think definitely. I think that if they're smart, they'll make a coaching change. And not because Tom Herman's a bad coach. I don't think he is. They've got to distance themselves from this Carroll coaching tree, right? I mean, it's one disaster after disaster. The team, it seems like he's lost the team, or there are reports coming out of there where there's infighting. Did somebody push the coach? Did somebody not push the coach? You can have all these distractions and win, and that's fine. But if you're losing in a media market like Los Angeles and all of this is happening, oh, man, it's just going to compound itself. And I think one of the reasons Lane Kiffin failed there is because he wasn't ready to deal with everything that comes with being the head coach of USC in Los Angeles. All the attention that comes with that. You have to manage so many other things besides just X's and O's. And I think Clay Helton's feeling that pressure right now. And if they can't find a way to rattle off some impressive wins and close the season, I don't know how long he is for that USC world.
Well, and we heard EJ Price transferred, and then we're also hearing Chuma Edoga, a guy that we all dealt with quite a bit back in his high school days. He's thinking about transferring. He didn't play this week after he missed practice with what they were calling a stomach bug, a stomach virus, which I think is obviously dubious timing considering. Then there's also rumors about Keyshawn Pai Young maybe wanting out of there. Jamel Cook also thinking about leaving, another Florida kid. Robbie, have you heard anything on those guys? I mean, is it possible that there's a mass exodus of all these Southeast players leaving USC together?
Yeah, I mean, I would. If you know anything about Southeast players, nothing's impossible. I hadn't talked to Jamel. I haven't talked to Jamel or Pai about it, but I've heard those same rumors you have from probably the same person, I think. There's definitely a possibility that those two are gone. I think that being that far away from home and then having all of this happen, especially if half of the things we've heard going on behind the scenes in that locker room are true, makes for kind of a volatile situation where you want to get out of there. And, I could definitely see it. Like I said, I have not spoken to either of them, but it would not surprise me.
Not to cast aspersions or say anything too critical of people that I'm not very familiar with, but if we're 4 games into a season, and a lot of these guys, it's their first experience playing college football, and things don't go quite so well in the first 4 games, and they all want to cut and run. I mean, don't you think that sort of character makeup might have something to do with the success level to start with to begin with?
Sure, but I don't know that it's so much just the losing as much as it is, if everything is to be believed, that it just does not sound like a very good college situation for anybody, right? Like, I mean, if there's really all this infighting, and, you read reports of fights on an airplane and people being shoved behind the scenes and possibly somebody pushing the coach, I mean, I'd want to get the heck out of there too.
I got news for you guys. We both, everybody knows how quickly a team can live or die by the success of its quarterback, but I think Max Brown goes down as a miss. For sure.
You think?
I think at this point, I mean, it took him so long to get on the field to begin with, and now with this chance, I mean, that offense just did not get the wheels turning, with him under the helm there, and it might be because of the coaching, but
yeah, sorry, Max. I mean, if you want to take a look at the state of Washington quarterbacks over the past, 5 to 7 years, there's some major hits and some major misses in terms of guys who are ranked super high and guys who, panned out. Jacob Eason looking good. Obviously, excuse me, I burped there. Obviously, Jake Browning, the quarterback at Washington, looks good, but boy, there's been some big time misses as well with some of the guys coming through there. If I'm with you guys. I think if I'm USC, you just got to ride out the year, and it's time to clean house completely. You need to rebuild. There's no question. We've seen them get good recruits. They have good players on their team. I think there's a definite attitude problem. You're going to have to switch, to one of these guys. It's a classic NBA situation, like we see where you have a nice guy come in, and eventually the players kind of overrun him, and then you got to bring in, a Scott Skiles type who's more of a disciplinarian, and then when they get tired of him after a few years, switch it up again. So it's just amazing that this is where USC is, like you said, stuck on the Pete Carroll coaching tree. Considering that they're USC and they, in my opinion, they have the money, they have the resources to go out and pursue whatever coach they want. But I think this bodes well for a lot of schools around the country who like to recruit the Los Angeles area, especially schools in the Pac-12 that may be able to take advantage of this and swoop in and grab some of these players as well.
So who's the disciplinarian we think they need? Is it like, Arlie Emery from Full Metal Jacket? Or, who do they bring in?
Well, it's so interesting when you look at the guys they've had. Helton, Sark, Kiffin. Coach Orgeron was a hit there. Remember that?
I remember Rob Cassidy was on the bandwagon of they need to keep him, if you recall. But that did not happen.
What if he does well at LSU? Could we stay on the Kiffin or the Carroll tree and get him in the mix as well? Get him a gig?
Yeah, I think that he works there. He's maybe the exception to the rule. I'd love to see him there. I think that I don't want to say he got a raw deal because he didn't. He obviously had a very rough go at Ole Miss as a head coach. But I think he's proven now that he's a capable coach. And if you put him in a situation where factors allow him to succeed, and I think people would love him. And people obviously do think fondly of him at USC already, right? So his approval rating is already, on an upward trajectory. So if you put him in place there, you don't have to sell it as much, I don't think. I think that would be a solid hire for them.
So we'll be watching that close as we continue to move along. One coach that is not on the hot seat in any way, shape, or form after his team finally beat Florida, Butch Jones in Tennessee. Big win for them. I don't know what happened. I think Rob and I were both in the same situation where we left to go do something else at halftime, and when we looked at the score again, something happened and Tennessee won. I assume they played well. I heard Derek Barnett had a good game. I heard that our friend of the show, Josh Malone, continues to look like one of Tennessee's best players, one of the best receivers in the SEC. My question is, we spoke about them last week in their out-of-state recruiting. They've been recruiting Florida, Rob. They've been dipping in. They got a couple. I think they got a 4-star. Of course, Tyler Bird was a top 100 guy that they got out of Naples last year. He made a couple big plays in that game. With Larry Scott on the staff there, do you see them being in a situation where, okay, they beat Florida here, maybe they win 10 games, where they can go get some of the absolute top guys in Florida? We hear them mentioned a lot, but can you see them making a push for some of the top talent, like stealing guys from Florida, Florida State, Miami?
I think that there are levels to this, as a great man once said. I don't know that they're ready in any shape or form to get the top guys. They're not going to go in there and get the number one recruit in the country out of Florida. Those top guys, those 5-star and top 4-star guys, are probably still a ways away from them. But right now they're getting they're dipping into that second level, like a Tyler Bird, and a third level, like other guys they got there last year. I think that they can see themselves move up here. You've beaten Florida now. Now the perception of your program, should you close out the season the way people expect you to close out the season, is, all right, this program just took the next step on the field. And usually when you take the next step on the field, that recruiting step kind of follows in suit. I think definitely. I think you'll see guys that considered them last year maybe thinking of them a little bit differently now.
And I think it's the same situation in Georgia. I think we talked off the air. We all expect them to go into Georgia this weekend and get a victory just based on how Georgia looked last week. If they win that game, now all of a sudden you've knocked two things off. You've got the Florida victory, and then you've got the big win against Georgia, which can help you in Atlanta. So You know, I think I think they have the momentum right now, but like you said, this can all change. They still have to play Texas A&M and M and Alabama in this stretch, and we've seen some other teams like Missouri surprisingly look good. The key for them is going to be, maintaining this. The momentum you have this week can go out the window in a hurry, as we saw, with some other programs already this season. So I think that's something we're going to continue to watch. Obviously it's big for them to break that streak. They can kind of sell that, hey, we're on the right track. We're moving things in the right direction. So
It's going to be. It would be really tough for them to. I think they're really going to have to pick and choose where they go in Florida if all things continue with the current trends that we're seeing in college. Obviously, Louisville is been the team. I mean, look at Lamar Jackson, right? I mean, he was a guy that was just begging for a Miami offer, right? If I recall, or some other Florida schools. Louisville goes in and picks him up and kind of lives in that tier of caliber of players that Rob was just referencing. And if Tennessee tries, we just talked a couple weeks ago about how much Tennessee is recruiting outside of their own state. If they want to make Florida a target, certainly a win against the Gators helps. But when you're competing against, Louisville, who's clearly got an upward trajectory, for that same level of player for kids that aren't considering the top big three schools, and Clemson, another school that kind of lives in that neighborhood too, as far as Florida recruiting goes, that'd really be a tough nut to crack for them for Tennessee, I think.
I think a successful Tennessee can, though, just because of the SEC allure, right? Like a good Tennessee is always going to be more attractive to Florida kids than a good Louisville because of the SEC, right? The ACC is maybe up a little bit now as compared to 5 years ago, but it's still not. It's probably better top to bottom right now this year, but, kind of the allure and the prestige and, everything that goes along with the SEC is still a draw. And I think, all things considered, people are going to see Tennessee with the history and the conference affiliation as a more premier program, rightly or wrongly, than Louisville.
I think what it comes down to is whoever has the better hashtag for their recruiting class, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's key. Well, I really enjoy the Clemson-Tennessee recruiting rivalry. For some reason, I enjoy the coaches going head to head as each of them kind of snark on the other ones behind the scenes, which I enjoy quite a bit. And then also the fans and the players. I mean, everyone loves to talk back and forth, and I'm all about the trash talk. So hopefully that carries over to Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and I want to see them go head to head on all fronts. Another quick coaching news that kind of slid under the radar. Notre Dame fired their defensive coordinator, Brian Van Gorder, yesterday being Sunday. And that appeared to be the news of the day until Les Miles happened. It was interesting. I've talked to a few players who visited up there this year, and I actually, surprisingly, one of them told me, the current players maybe are not the biggest fan of Van Gorder, which, you really hear from players after these visits who tell you, oh, well, the players told me how much they love the coaches, blah, blah, blah. We didn't get that kind of feedback. So obviously they've been playing bad. Van Gorder's out. And now, we spoke of this last week. They got a 4-star defensive tackle commit, shortly after losing that game. They lose again this week. They lose Van Gorder. I'm beginning to think that, this is going to have a recruiting impact, especially if we have to wait for some guys. Rob, they recruit Florida. Are they in on any big guys this year? I mean, they seem to be doing well up in the Mid-Atlantic, but what's the perception, I guess, of Notre Dame down there?
They're not gonna get anybody show-stopping out of Florida this year, and they never were. I don't think that there's, any of the uncommitted guys anyway. I don't think Jerez Parks is going to go to Notre Dame. Plus, it's kind of funny to watch them battle old rival Michigan because they seem to be doing that in Florida, right? So they have the on-field rivalry, and now it seems like a lot of those guys that maybe would have went to Notre Dame out of Florida are now going to Michigan instead. I mean, Michigan's really doing well down here. Notre Dame, while they do have some guys out of the state, they're not getting anywhere near the top targets that they set in the state. It just isn't happening for them right now. And this may, set them back even further down here. In order to recruit Florida, if you're going to be a Big Ten school, you have got to be seen as one of these programs with an upward trajectory and, a larger-than-life prestige thing, right? And, Notre Dame used to be Notre Dame, and that was the whole allure to drag people out of Florida to go to that school up in the upper Midwest. If they're not winning and they're not seen as a prestigious football institution, they'll always be seen as a prestigious academic institution. I think these are two separate worlds. then what do they have really? Especially if they're going against Michigan, who now is kind of established itself as if you're going to leave South Florida and go to the Midwest, that's where you're going, right? Harbaugh has become Mr. Florida at this point.
Yeah, he has done a good job, and Van Gorder was one of the guys who really tied people into Georgia as well, because he had success at Georgia. He knew a lot of the high school coaches down here, and it was one of the reasons that they were trying to recruit this area. They kind of haven't had much luck. I mean, and same with Tennessee. They've dipped into there. They managed to get Dante Vaughn, a safety out of Memphis, but there's middling results. At your school like Notre Dame, there's a certain type of player you can almost identify them, from our perspective on who Notre Dame will have a shot at, and they've struck out more than a few times over the past few years. Nick, they're also recruiting Texas. Is it just a situation where, like you said, Notre Dame's going to have to take the second tier guy, and they may not be able to go head to head on some of these, 5-star guys, top 100 guys?
Listen, my feel on Notre Dame is not one of much positivity at this point, and I think they've kind of been stagnant under Brian Kelly. I mean, it's in one of those programs now that's always just been sort of good enough, and they've always got a major opportunity every season, inherently playing a essentially a completely independent schedule, football wise, to always put themselves in the conversation, and then they just never truly make good on it. There's always, I think the last defensive coordinator they had too really butted heads with a lot of the players, and obviously we've seen Brian Kelly lose his cool a million times over. So the whole vibe out there is really, I mean, you're really attracting a very specific sort of player, and they don't even, any conversation that I've had with any recruits here in Texas, they definitely just play up the fact that, hey, Notre Dame is a brand, in of itself, and you just want to be, one of those players to put on the gold helmet, and go out there and represent a school with some history and some prestige. And, to your point, when you can identify kids early in the process, by whether or not you feel that they value that sort of thing, in their recruitment, that makes things easier to look at. But I mean, right now, it seems like things are their reach is contracting more so than expanding. And when you compare it to Harbaugh, I mean, how many satellite camps did Brian Kelly do this offseason? I can't think of it.
Yeah, I got him. You got him on that one. I agree with both you guys. That's a good comparison, comparing Michigan and Notre Dame. I'm sure our Notre Dame fans will love this conversation. Normally at this point in the show, we transition to an interview, but this week, because we're recording on Monday, we're going to release an interview later in the week as a standalone episode, so be on the lookout for that, a potential
another head coach,
big name guest.
We've become the de facto podcast for head coaches, right? We've had the 3 SEC guys. We're now dipped into the Pac-12. If everything goes well, we'll be in the Big Ten this week. Really, we need a Big 12 guy on the show to complete the slam, right?
Yeah, it's really tough to pull them off in season too. Hopefully, this offseason will be a steady flow. We need to get some players on here too. I think it's just it takes a certain kind of player to get them in this situation, but we'll keep it coming. So be on the lookout for that. Now time for the tweet of the week. We didn't really have any no hilarious candidates this week. I was surprised that not a lot of kids said anything that we could make fun of. No corporate restaurant references are allowed on the show, so we couldn't do any of those tweets this week. So we decided to pick Bruce Feldman, who hosts a podcast that I listen to on the regular. He tweets, "Word is LSU made the move now because there was a feeling Les Miles might temporarily save his job again and program would keep going in circles." So, boy, kind of shots fired, right?
Yeah, but also here's my question. All right, so if you deconstruct that tweet and we take it to be true, and Bruce is always very accurate, so he does not make up things, so I suppose that he at least heard this from somebody. It is saying that the person that makes this decision temporarily save his job again. Well, don't you make that decision? You can fire him no matter what. There's nothing in the contract that says if he wins the next game, you have to keep him. But the logic of he might temporarily save his job again was feared. Well, was it feared by the people making these decisions? Because they could fire him after he beat Alabama if they want to. I mean, that's their decision.
Well, and I think assuming that it's weird because that makes it seem like that person was almost rooting for them to have a bad season.
I know.
So if they finish 10-2, they would be unhappy, you know. So like I said, I think this all goes back to last year, and that's the reason. So there was a funny there was a funny tweet from Kirk Herbstreit I was trying to find that came out yesterday. It wasn't really related to I think he might have deleted it actually. Oh no, it's still here. It was during the Tennessee Titans game yesterday against the Oakland Raiders, which I was paying attention to a little bit. Tennessee had drove down to the 4-yard line, was about to tie the game, and offensive lineman Taylor Lewan came flying in and tried to hit somebody and got a personal foul, and it went from being first and goal to being, all the way back out to the 19-yard line. And Kirk Herbstreit, who lives in Tennessee now, tweeted, "You're an absolute fraud, bro." And he mentioned Taylor Lewan and then used the hashtags, hashtag fake tough guy, hashtag loafer, hashtag try to hustle, hashtag I see you walking off the field, hashtag fraud, hashtag pathetic.
We gotta lay on the hashtags here, Kirk.
That's a lot of hashtags.
Talk about shots fired. I think he really, he really went at him. I didn't, it got retweeted 1,000 times. I don't know if we got a response from Taylor, but I really, I really enjoyed that.
I think that he threw the word bro in there because it goes so well with just this aesthetic, right? Like he just looks like the kind of guy that would use the word bro sparingly.
That's funny. It was a funny tweet from all I could see. So we move on now. We're not going to have the rants and recommendations this week. Instead, let's move on to the game of the week. I accidentally skipped that on the rundown. Last week we had Texas A&M and Arkansas, and both of you jabronis happened to take Arkansas +6. Guess what? Whatever gig 'em, which is I don't even know what that means.
Guess what, Nick and Rob? You've been gigged. It means stabbing. It actually means stabbing a frog. So like its origins are with the TCU rivalry, right? So gig 'em, like gigging frogs, means stabbing frogs, like live frogs on sticks. And so gigging them is basically murdering frogs. That's what that is.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I gigged you guys last week as I picked the Aggies. They easily covered, and that moves us all to 2-1 on the season. So
yeah, congratulations! You have the same record as me and Rob now. Great job.
Yeah, well, it's all about momentum.
Yeah. It's all about who gigs who at the end of the season, right? We should bet something on this.
We don't want to announce a prize without getting it cleared. So this week we have Clemson and Louisville. Boy, what a game. Clemson hosting Louisville. The Tigers a 2-point favorite. So really not getting a whole lot of respect for being a team that, was in the national championship last year. They've been a little slow to start the year. What do we think? How is this going to shake out? Rob, we'll start with you. Would you take the Cardinals to pull the upset on the road?
I will not. I will take Clemson to gig Louisville for sure, and the 2 points. So
they're going to gig them. Nick, what do you think?
Man, this is tough because I really haven't watched enough of either team so far this year, so I'm just kind of going into this blindly. I'm going to say Louisville as well, just because I feel like I'm just going based on the kind of the relative slow start of Clemson.
No, I took Clemson. I'm Team Clemson here. So you and I are on different ends for the first time this season.
Oh, boy, nice of you guys not to link up your picks. So Nick flying blind. I don't know. It's tough to go in there and play in Clemson, but Lamar Jackson, he doesn't really care what's going on, as we remember from interacting with him at several times. He's the definition of even keel. I think. Well, you know what? Forget it. I'm taking Clemson at home. I just can't.
You can't bet against your boy Deshaun, BFFs.
Yeah, I love Deshaun Watson. So he's going to be my pick. We'll pick him, and then we'll see what happens. So we got a couple different picks. Nick going out on a limb to pick the Tigers. So that wraps up this week's episode.
Nick picked Louisville.
You guys picked this. So this is a big opportunity for me to take a lead here between the three of us.
Okay, I can't remember what's going on.
Somebody needs to gig you.
Show. I'm gigged. I got gigged by this headache I have right now. So I kept it together for 45 minutes. That's the best I could do. That wraps up this week's episode. Reminder: reach out to us. Let us know what you want. What do you want to hear? Guests you want to hear? Questions you have? at Rivals Podcast or rivalspodcast@yahoo.com. And of course, iTunes, reviews, subscriptions. We want to thank our boy, M. Deuce, for producing the music that you hear every week. You can find him on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/M-Deuce. We thank you for listening, and be sure to join us again for a new episode next week.